This podcast was previously called Business from Within, but one of the biggest things I know in my life, and the lives of people that I've coached and even my mentors, if you're not aligned 100% with what you're going to do, things just don't go as smoothly. Things are a little bit tougher. I got to tell you, I think we've done 40 episodes as the Business from Within podcast, and I realized 90% of the results we see with working with people come from within. So many people become victims by saying, I need something outside of myself to fix myself. When the answer is in who you are, in yourself. You have the answer. And you know what? Dealing with relationship coaching, dealing with business coaching, at the end of the day, my heart aligns with from within more than it aligns with business from within. And I'd encourage you to ask yourself, where am I not aligned? And I'm going to tell you right now, when you're aligned, you can go 10 times farther, 10 times faster, and it doesn't feel like work. Business from Within podcast has been a lot of fun, but now it's called From Within. And it now touches the lives of people all over the place. Rather than just focusing on business, it's truly a catalyst for your life, your business, and relationships. Thanks for listening.
Okay, we've got Dave Brett here on the Business from Within podcast, soon to be called From Within podcast, just FYI. Dave and I have known each other for got to be over 8 years.
Is it already been 8 years?
8 years, I know. Well, that's good. It didn't seem too long for you then.
Yeah.
So Dave is
just
one of the...
Just when we hang out.
I'm trying to do an intro for you, dude, and you keep interrupting me. So...
That's why I'm amazed that we lasted 8 years.
Okay. Yeah, no doubt. This is exactly how this whole show is going to be. So Dave is the owner of Griffins Boxing and Fitness. It's one of the largest boxing gyms in all of Canada. He's the inventor of a system called BoxFit, which we will talk about, which is really cool. He is one of the best guerrilla marketing guys I know, and I'm one of the best out there as well. So it means something. I can see it. The guy's so good. One of the biggest guys I know too, size-wise. He's a big dude.
You call me?
Well, you call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but I think you're a big dude. And I said, but your heart is matching that size, and you know that. And I said, I was just thinking, man, you are like a really good friend, and I know you take pride in that, and you're really good at that. You have also, Dave has spoke at my real estate events, my retreats. He has shared his personal story with some of the real estate people that I've mentored. He also has put us through some grueling workouts at his gym. Probably grueling is like, you're like, what? That was like kids level. It was grueling for us.
No comment.
No comment. David also just got off the stage last week at one of the biggest events I've seen him on stage. It's a big deal. It was the TED Talks. It's going to be everywhere. We might be able to link that show or link that talk, Dave, to this podcast if you have the link.
Cool.
Really cool. And yeah, honestly, man, you're one of the coolest guys I know. I'm so happy to know he's a friend. I just remember one story I'll start out with is we were hanging out. We also shared a mentor together. And I was in Vancouver with you, and I was thinking, like, you're like, hey, you want to go for a run? I'm thinking, I'm not really a runner. And you're like, oh, no, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, just a quick little run. So I'm thinking, okay, I better get some food. If I'm going to run, like, obviously not a good move. And I ate like a big salad. You looked at me, you're like, oh, you're eating that now? I'm like, why? Not supposed to eat this now? Totally. And then next thing you know, we're on the freaking water sea bus going across to downtown. I'm thinking, how are we getting back? And I had to run. I think it was the longest run I've ever done in my life. And you're like, yeah, just nothing. So just FYI, the guy's a liar when it comes down to like, yeah, no big deal. Just if it's working out, it's going to be hard and it's going to be effective.
Yeah, I tell my staff when my name's on the schedule, it's actually bad for business because people don't come to my classes. They're like, no.
Yeah, I trust you, just not in that area.
Yeah, just not there. Yeah.
So Dave, this whole concept of the podcast is tying, origin stories to business. And I feel like we learn so much tactics, and I love that stuff. Tactical. I love the marketing stuff. We'll chat about that. But there's something like, what is the driving force behind everyone? we get taught about success with business planning, accounting, strategic marketing, and squeeze pages. But I think and know that deep down, what's driving success, what's sabotaging our success. And I feel like I'd love to hear a little bit of your backstory. I know it really well. I think people would absolutely lean in, because I think you've hit a level of success as a boxing owner, businessman, that most won't reach. But I truly believe that you've tied, and you know it. I'd love to tie your backstory to that if possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think that all those things that you said lead to success, but I truly think that the true route to success is vulnerability, compassion, understanding people. That type of leadership is so important, especially nowadays. And for me, I got that from the journey that I've been on, and that I'm still on. And all these tools and squeeze page and all that other stuff that you talk about, they really are secondary to how we treat the core people around us, how we treat the bigger people around us, how we treat our communities and our families. So yeah, I'll just segue into that. So for my history, I mean, one of the things that I did once, I did a talk, and I told about my story, and I had this piece of paper in front of me, and I read off the piece of paper. I'm like, when I was 10, and I kept looking at my notes, and afterwards I got out of there and I was like, man, this is so stupid. I've just read a piece of paper that I wrote about the life that I lived, and I'm reading the paper like I couldn't comprehend that. And I think what I got out of that was that really the story, the details of the story, it's not really the stuff that matters. It's the lessons that we learn from the details of the story that really can affect people, And so I'd segue into just that, when I was growing.
Got a bit of a glitch here, Dave.
3 times.
Dave, I had a bit of a glitch. Just go back. So you said can you hear me? Yeah. Everything's good? Okay, we'll just cut that apart. So you were just saying when I grew up or something.
Yeah. So when I grew up, it was tough. It was tough. I lived with a very, very poor mom. Didn't talk to my dad all that much, and they didn't treat each other well. Back in the early 80s, there was no such thing as, equality for that type of thing. And, my mom had cancer, not one time, not 2 times, but 3 times, before the age of 11. And back then, cancer was not a family disease, as they call it now. It's not something that they talked about. It's like, your mom's fine. She has no hair, and she can't get out of bed, but she's fine, go play. And, from that to, abuse and going and moving families and going to live with my dad, which, he was a wealthy guy. And so most people would say, oh, what's wrong with that? But when you transition literally overnight from, living in a co-op to living in a, a large house with maybe the old school belief system that comes with. My best friend was Seymour, a black kid in the co-op. Well, that was not really allowed up there at the new house, and stuff like that was really, really hard. But what I learned from that is that you can get lots of these punches thrown at you in life, lots of them. You can get the jabs and the crosses and the hooks and the uppercuts that hit you in the guts that are like, why can't my best friend come over? You're dying? Are you really okay? Or, why are you hitting me? Or why did you do that to me? All those punches that we receive, and we can take that and we can, later on in life, I take it and put it into a boxing analogy and say we defend them, and it just makes us stronger. It makes us, who we are today. And it's that defense that I was able to use. It's about getting back up when I got knocked down. It's about blocking that punch. It's about, slipping to the side and moving my head that allowed me to be here right now, where I can mentor other kids that are going through very similar issues, other adults that that raise kids, that ask questions. Everyone's going through a fight, whether it's similar or not. It's still the same thing, and I've just really learned that those punches that we all receive, they're not end game stuff, and that we can get really strong from practicing the defense on those. And I think that's really what I've learned, when I look back into my life.
So, and I remember you saying that you were kind of a bit of a troublemaker kid through all the stuff, all those punches you've gone through, and the different levels of abuse and people hurting people, and we go through these things, but it does affect you. Like you went through, like, were you like dealing drugs and just being a bit of a street party guy? Like, what was your looking like before you got into boxing? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, man, I was well on my way to a life full of crime for sure. I'd like to think that now if I ever got like stuck somewhere and there was a car there, I'd be able to like break into it and totally jimmy it and get myself to safety.
Yeah, so you've got a skill set. That's good.
I have a skill set. When my members lock their keys in the car, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I got this. Click. Whoa.
I got it.
That's awesome. So,
yeah.
So you were, when were the first time you got introduced to boxing?
Well, man, like, I was just gonna say, just sidetrack for a sec, but like, it was my first time realizing that I was an entrepreneur when my life was full of drugs and doing shitty things, is because I started to be like, if I don't smoke this, or if I buy a lot of it and then distribute it, you know what I mean? Like, I started to understand like the world of economics through that.
Why am I smoking away my profit?
Yeah. Why do I buy from someone else when I can grow it myself?
Yeah. Cut out the middleman.
Yeah, so that entrepreneur skill actually came from that, and it got honed and fine-tuned from that, because you have friends that you have to give deals to, and you have these people and that. So it was really quite interesting. But I remember the day, actually. I remember the day I just got back from being in court, and I was standing in front of the judge. I was on my way to, probably not jail, but we had been in jail the night before, or 2 nights before, and I was definitely on my way to something not nice, whether it's home detention or tons of community hours or whatever it may have been. Yeah. And I'm this like slick back hair, goatee, like maybe with like one of these apps you could put it on me right now and you could see what I look like. It was terrible.
Not that fancy.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, the judge asked, how do we know you're going to turn your life around? And I didn't have men in my life. I didn't have role models. This is why I support Big Brothers right now through our charities, is that, I think that is so important, because my grandpa stood up at the back of the court, and I didn't know he was there. He had come down, and he's this older guy, and I stood up and he talked about how good a kid I am, and he talked about that I have compassion, and that I'm that I care for people, and that I do these things that I was like, what are you talking about? You don't know me. Like, I'm hardcore, like I don't have that. But he was right. Like, I did. I had it deep down inside.
You saw past it.
Yeah, like I had
it. Saw who you were, who you really were.
Yeah, he was the guy that did, and I don't know if my granny had stood up and said the same things. I don't know. I had lots of women in my life, but there was no men. There was no role figure for that. And my grandpa kind of was like, he's definitely my hero now. But back then I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll come and steal your scotch. Sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he said that, and I left the courtroom after the judge was like, "Hey, let's get rid of this thing." And I went home, and I went up to my room, and I had one of these like mirrors, the tall mirrors you could see yourself. And I sat on my bed and I looked in the mirror, and man, Ben, I fucking hated that guy. That guy I saw was the guy that despised me. He was the guy that just I didn't want to be. I knew from a kid playing like with dinky cars, and being like, I got this, I got this, I got this. I'm gonna be successful in life. All this other stuff. To this guy that's looking at me in the mirror, I'm like, this guy. And I remember very clearly. I looked at the mirror, I pointed at myself in the mirror, and I said, I fucking hate you. I broke down. I was bawling. I was shaking. Like that day was a write-off for me, man. But it was the pinnacle change, because at that moment I said to myself inside, I said, I have the ability for compassion. I have the ability to be vulnerable. I have the ability to be kind, to make the proper choices, and I don't even know proper choice is actually the right word. I have the ability to make a different choice, because a lot of the situations in my life I had the ability to control. I was just the one choosing to do the shitty one, the shitty version of it.
Totally.
And as I exit that day, I was like, I got to do something. And it just so happened that someone had given me a book. It was called The Power of One. I think Disney made a movie of it, for God's sake. But The Power of One, it was from Bryce Courtney. And it was about this kid who was born in Africa. And I was born in Zimbabwe. Okay, a little connect. And he had a really crappy upbringing. I'm like, oh, well, I felt I had a crappy upbringing, and this kid found boxing, and he had this, older guy who was his mentor. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't box because I'm this fat, like, ex-gangster kind of wannabe in my head.
Yeah.
But I had this guy who looked out for me, and then he goes and he actually changes people's lives with boxing. And I'm like, man, that sounds cool. And the next day I went and I looked for a gym to train. And from that moment, man, it really changed my life. Within I don't know, I would like to say about 5 or 6 months, I had trimmed down, I was fit, I was smiling again. I started to like help the coach classes, and things were really, really positive. And the coach went to Florida for 2 weeks, and a couple months later, when we didn't hear from him, started taking over the program. And a buddy of mine and I taught this program, and we ran it for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And went back to school. I got a degree. I dropped out of high school, and I went back, and I got a adult dogwood, and I got into UBC, and I got a degree in science and biological life science. And those things for me aren't massive like had tos in life, but they're definitely things that I feel proud of.
For sure.
And it really was A, the looking in the mirror, and B, the tool of boxing that helped build my confidence to be able to do those things.
It's cool because you're like, I know your world really well, and it's like so cool to look back and be like, the story of that book is literally what you're doing right now. Like, that's crazy, man. Like, you're mentoring young men to take over classes in your gym. Like, it's just like it's almost like voodoo magic or something. Like, what the heck happened? Or like, it was just almost like, like the hand of God just says, boom, here. You know what I mean? Or it's a ghost, or like it's almost out of body. Because how did that happen?
And the cool thing, like in my experience, I had moms and sisters and aunts and that thing in my life. And, I had my dad, like at certain points he was there, but he wasn't, and I haven't talked to him in, I don't know, 9 years now. And I miss the guy. I want to reach out. I want to connect now as I've grown older, but the guy was my grandpa. And being able to mentor other boys and other men here has been amazing. But there's other women and other girls that also need mentoring,
For sure.
and that's one of the greatest things. The gift for me now is watching the people that I mentored. I have like my main guy Dan, or Matt, or Sarah, or Nick, or Parsa, who's only 16. Like, those guys are starting to mentor people,
So cool.
and that is a gift in itself,
So
man. Like,
cool.
that blows your mind when you look back, and you sit this 16-year-old kid down who's drinking and doing shitty things, and you're like, you have opportunity, blah 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 blah, my grandpa in the background, and like 180-degree turn. The kid is amazing,
Beautiful.
and just be able to like help people see their gifts and their abilities is just, I can't express how cool that is.
It's so cool to hear all that. Like, I think we definitely share similar passions. Where you wrap it in boxing, I wrap it in real estate. It's the same thing. Like, there's nothing like seeing someone overcome and break free, and then connect with their relationships and their kids, and just happen to be that they become very financially successful almost as a side deal. And this is
Right.
like, I feel like I get so frustrated in this world of fucking squeeze pages and marketing, and now it's cool to talk vulnerability. Now it's cool to like talk impact, and like it's almost like it's getting watered down, but like it's really important what you're describing. It's like, it's almost like to connect to your story, to connect with that. You can absolutely do a boxing gym and still tie your absolute passions into this, where you're mentoring people and you're having a fulfilled life. I think there's a lot of people branding themselves that way, but what you're talking about is legit. This is real deal. It's driving your business. It's obvious.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look out into that world, because boxing is very old school, or at least it is changing now. But for many years, it was old school, and that old school thought and the old school reaction, in more of a negative mind space was,
Yeah.
nothing, you suck, F you for making any money at this. You're supposed to volunteer. You're supposed to be in a basement of a beer and wine store. You're supposed to be this, and like that, like hardcore negative feel. And to this day, we have that from top people in our organization. We have that, and that stuff's hard to push past. That's the bully you faced when you were 13. That's the cancer that you had to get over. Those are like big deals. They bring up big stuff. But the super cool thing is that when you had experience and you have a story that you've learned lessons from, man, you just have to like slip, parry,
dodge and weave, and yeah,
and you get on and you build this community that is just the most supportive and most amazing, and people connect with vulnerability. Even the toughest dudes I know connect with vulnerability if you're vulnerable with them. If you're looking at them, if you're sitting, where you are, looking at me and stone face and, talking hardcore, I would probably be vulnerable, but it would be harder for me to be.
Totally.
But when you are vulnerable together, when you're able to create a space of that, man, you can have so much cool magic happen, and you can get to some real topics. And it's not about the BS in life. That stuff's just noise. It really is. Them real conversations of like, where you're really gonna go, what are you really gonna do? Are you gonna stop your car and when an old lady drops her bag of groceries on the ground, are you gonna stop it in the middle of the street, get out and help her? Are you gonna drive by? And I don't know what that story was about, but
dude,
like,
you're on fire, Dave. Holy shit, man. It's like you were in a zone, dude. I'm telling you, I can feel it. I love it, man. You're crazy inspirational, for real. Like, you're in it. It's cool to see you like this, for real. Like, I've known you for a long time. That's really cool, man. It's like hitting me pretty good.
Well, is that like hitting you like when we went into the boxing ring and then I got to spar everyone there that time?
Yeah, I know. I
I
do have a
told you,
question.
don't wear your shoes in the boxing ring.
I was like bare feet. They're like, what do you think this is? I'm like, no, I'm okay. No, Ben, you're not. Besides, I wear
Yeah.
shoes. I wear my. You're right. Yeah. Anyways, I was gonna ask you, because since you're a fighter, if me and you ever got into it, like we had to actually scrap, what would be your first move? And do you think that I could take you?
You know, the interesting thing is that my entire boxing career, I never ever wanted to be the champ with my hands up. I've always wanted to coach people. I've always wanted to be the person that could help people achieve that.
Cool.
And I have gone into the ring, and the first couple fights I went to the ring, I didn't do it for me. I did it to shut the people in the background, I shut them up, because they were bringing me down so hard with, you know nothing, you haven't been in boxing. You know, even though I've coached since I was, 18 or 19 or something like that, it was just to shut them up until I actually found I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hard work and the dedication it took to get to the moment in that ring where you could just do what you trained for. And I've done it when I didn't do the hard work and I didn't train, and I suffered the result. And that result, I decided in my life, I didn't want to do again. I didn't want to have the defeat, and I wanted to put my hand up, and I wanted to win. And again, I just said I didn't dream to be that person, and I still don't.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to be the person that puts the work in, that trains hard, that gets up in the morning and does their road work, that pushes hard during the training session, so that when I got to the fight,
you're ready.
then it was easy. It was easy. And I think that you can relay that to anything in life.
No question.
Anything in life.
You're writing a book, Dave?
Well, interesting that you say that, because
God, I'm like, this guy's got a book. It's like you're working on it or something.
Well, it was interesting because when I developed the glove system, and a little plug is that
we can plug that. We don't have a little plug. We'll plug the crap out of it, whatever you need.
I opened when I was 25, and at 24, I was like, how do I keep people into boxing? Like, karate has belts, taekwondo has belts, kickboxing has belts, like all these people have these systems. Boxing, you walk down the stairs of a basement of a beer and wine store, you get your nose broken within the first week or two, and you never go back. That was boxing back then. And so I developed a program with different color hand wraps. So you start just like karate, you start at white and you move your way up through the system all the way to black, and it's been amazing. It's one of those things that you can help people achieve their levels, and it helps keep members immersed in your community, and it helps to define the skills so that when they get into the ring, they're ready, right? And I totally don't know where I was going with that. No, that's
cool. No, we're talking about your. No, that's. I actually really wanted to talk about that, to be honest. Now, the one thing I do know, because I've known you for a while, is that sat on the shelf for a long time.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that, because there's a lot of people that listen, and an idea is worthless. And the thing is, you actually have to work on your certain personal barriers to actually unleash this genius idea. Like, it was just sitting there. Like, why, like, can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think it's really cool. It's those little moments that cause breakthrough that we don't really write books on.
Right. Oh, it was the book. Sorry. I'm just going to backtrack to that, because I think it's quite an interesting thing. So when I first developed that, now I'm 40. Okay. So, that's 15, 16 years ago, where I'm like, okay, well, let's do this system.
Yeah.
And how I built this system is I love systems. I love taking really complex things, breaking it all down, and then rebuilding it back up so it makes sense. It's always working like, what type of defense is there? Okay, where there's your hand defense, there's the head defense, and there's your feet defense where you step back. And so when I'm writing this TED Talk and I'm going through this, series of defenses, I'm like, okay, well, we got hands, we got head, we got feet. And I built the entire talk on that.
Cool.
And and I practiced it, and I did all my road work, and I did all my training, and came onto stage and presented it. And it was only a couple days after that, after I was down from my high, which it was incredible.
Crazy. Yeah.
That I was like, wait a second, like for 15 or 16 years in my gym, I've been going, guys, hands, head, feet, the hands, head, feet. And I realized that hands, head, feet really, really equates to all of the defense in life, all of it. So, you know, the shitty things in life, the annoying things, you know, we parry it. We just slip out of the way. We let it go past. We keep going. It's about kind of letting it go. It's about, you know, keep going towards that goal. They're just annoying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's about the hook that's coming at you, and you got to block it, and you got to counter punch. And I think of those like kind of like hits to relationships, or, you know, what, you don't like me? I thought we were friends, you know, and you got to keep going. You got to keep going, or, and you got to, you know, the head defense is about like changing your mindset. It's instead of being negative, and you have to go to a positive mindset. You have to think abundantly, like don't react, like go to your goal. And what are the steps, right? And then feet is about stepping back. It's about getting perspective. Like, you know, stop for a sec. Let's figure out what this is actually about, and let's go. Sometimes I have to just pivot. Sometimes I got to go in a different direction. And so that you know, that talk for me was a huge insight on how I've already led a team, how I already lead my life. And it was really it was crazy because I didn't know it. I didn't know it for 16 years. I was doing it until I had that opportunity. So it was really cool for me.
Really cool. And is it going to be a book? Did someone come up to you and say, let's do a book, or what?
No, but, you know, hands, head, feet.
I love it. I just bought the website. It's for sale.
Yeah, I've already trademarked it. I've already bought it. Like, I'm the king of that.
I got a domain for you. It's for sale.
I own the ability to teach boxing using different colored hand wraps across the entire world.
It's all good. That's cool, man.
Yeah,
that's
so
really cool. Love that.
You know, when I look at, like, you know, I own another product called BoxFit, and, you know, we coined this term, and you know, we've licensed it out to people, and it's in the States, and it's in Canada. It's not to where I want it to go. And I sat on this thing for a long time. I sat on it to be able to, like, okay, you can use this, you know, here's the name. There's not a lot of feature to it, but, you know, it's an active business. But just recently we're like, okay, you know, I got to be able to put this thing out. This actually has meaning. And part of it is that, like, back then, man, it was so old school. It was so old school.
Yeah, exactly.
And
maybe
now
it's such a time as this, right?
Yeah, and now it's a bit new school.
And you're way different than 10 years ago as well. So there's no, like, this. There's a perfectness about how things happen too.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. So, you know, just as you step in, you're right that every idea that people have is just an idea.
Yeah.
Until you get it out there. And as an entrepreneur, one of my big challenges is that I have lots of them.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Right? Every entrepreneur does.
Yeah.
It's about building a team.
You got it.
That is able to complement that, you know, 100%. And the first team member is the hardest. Yeah. And then you'll actually go through that person about 4 times sometimes. And finally, I always say you probably suck at relationships at some level. So if don't practice at home, practice under an assistant. So hire an assistant, and you're going to realize that you're not the best at relationships. They're going to quit, or you're going to fire them. Then do it again and practice at that place. Don't practice. You heartless bastard. No, just kidding.
It's true, man. Like, I went through a few, and I'm like, why? Like, my expectations were about 1 million, and I'm going, why can't you just do this? Just get up at 3 a.m. and get it done. Like, not like that, but, you know, it's like, then you go through the point where you're like giving way too much, and then they take advantage of you, and then it's like, shit. That's why it's important to move forward with that, right? No, you nailed it, man. That is the fast. Like, people wonder, how are you doing so much stuff, Ben? I'm like, well, because I'm not gonna produce this podcast. I've got a guy in New York that's gonna bang it out. I got an assistant that does some artwork for me. Like, how does Walmart run?
Right.
How like you just got to shift from being a worker to a business owner, and a business owner.
I heard a great thing about Walmart and didn't check to see if this was true or not, but
Just heads up.
I heard that Walmart had 7 stores for 25 years.
That'd be cool stat. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's
Right. And then of course Walmart's the overnight success. But I think the guy from Zumba said it the best. I think on a podcast, the guy said to him, I'm like, you guys are an overnight success. And he's like, we're a 10-year overnight success.
Oh, exactly.
You know,
dude, I was thinking of, do you know the movie Mystic River?
is that like Brokeback Mountain?
Yeah, no. No, this was on remember the movie stores where they had the room for the adult videos?
Yeah.
Remember that? For the millennials, that was pre-internet. And that was like, you'd sneak in there and you try to sneak in there a little bit.
Grease the hinges so it'd go.
Yeah, I know. I brought WD-40 with mine in. Anyways, yeah, no, it's not those movies. But what the point is, Mystic River was Julia Roberts' first movie. So I was speaking in Connecticut, and I've heard of this town called Mystic, and I'm like, holy crap. So there's this Mystic pizza joint. I went and just drove by and looked at it, because I like to always remember, like, you look at these mega stars. I love to find out where they started, and they sucked. The starting is like, people just don't actually get through it. You got to go fall. You got to be doing something you really love to do to be able to go through the grind. People are like, I can grind it out. No, only if you actually love what you're doing, then it's not a grind. So you look at some of the movies of the biggest stars, and like, oh, wow, they're getting paid 10, 20, 30 million a movie. And she had a movie called Mystic River. And it was just like, or Mystic something, Mystic Pizza, whatever it was, but it's Julia Roberts. So I just drove down there, and just like this hole in the wall place. And I always thought, man, I'd love to have like some of these people on my show just to talk about how they began. Because exactly what you said, it's an overnight success. I'd love to talk to overnight successes who 15 years in the making, you know?
Oh, man, I think every single one of them, every single one of them. And
it'd be really cool.
And I'm not saying you have to have cancer or physical or sexual abuse or whatever in your life to be successful. I'm not saying that at all.
But everyone has a challenge to overcome.
There's a challenge. You have to have a challenge to overcome. You gotta get knocked down a little bit. And
well, it has to, yeah, or else you don't grow. Like, how do you know any other, like, even how muscles work? You tear the muscles, you rip them, and then they grow stronger. So we don't embrace the pain of life, and I think we run from it. But if we could lean into the pain of it, I think we could actually fast track growth, confidence, self-worth, relationships. But we run from it so bad, and we avoid it. We tell ourselves stories, and you know, like, I'm big on this. As you get excited, I'm getting excited because the challenge of life is actually where the magic is. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. Unfortunately, guys like you and I have had stuff that's been like Mount Everest style challenges, but in relation to someone else, it might just be nothing too. Like, it's all perspective, but it could just be all about
perspective. That's huge.
Well, I think about the people that inherited $20 million when they're 18 years old. Like, their challenges are crazy hard. Like, they don't feel they deserve it. There's expectation. Like, there's like, even, you know, like, there's anyone's challenge can be massive. You know, we can never judge that.
Yeah. And I think that's where that piece of compassion comes in, is because compassion allows you to understand that everybody is living a different story than you. Totally. Right. And that, you know, maybe living in a co-op was the best thing to happen to, I don't know, Mark, who lived in the co-op with me. You know, maybe that was the best thing to happen to him. And his story had other struggles.
Totally.
And for me, or for Seymour, it was really tough, you know, or maybe it wasn't, you know, maybe it was actually the things that helped us grow and define us.
But that's the point of almost embracing the life you've got. And it's almost, there's just, like you said, I think we go around the mountain until we learn the lesson. That's why people have the same relationship over and over again. They do the same thing, and there's lessons to be learned, and then you move forward. And if you don't embrace it, you run from it, you never learn the lesson. And then you're 60, 70 years old, sitting there drinking at home, you know, lonely. Like, you never learned the lesson. It's like I feel like go ahead.
I just think that, you know, if we can look at life in more of an abundant space, I think if we can stop being such victims in our own life,
totally,
you know, and
we all have that level. Yeah.
We all do, every
Yeah.
one of us, and
Everyone
stop
knows.
reacting so much. It's all about like reaction, like something happens and bam, you
Mhm.
know, instead of like looking at it and knowing where you want to go. You know, a good buddy of ours, uh, Chris, he said it all the time. He's like, as soon as you say should, you're shooting all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
have done that. I should have done that. I should have done that.
Totally.
Like we say it all the time. It's our daily language.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I want to do that, and I got hit back a little bit, and now I gotta go, and I want it. I still want it, but what are the
Mhm.
steps we have to take to do it?
Totally.
What's the play? Like, what kind of road work do we need to do? What kind of training do we have to do on the bag in order to raise our hand at the end? What do we have to do? Do we have to hit hand targets? Do we have to spar? Do we have to run? Do you have to sprint?
Yeah.
You know, what do you have to do? Those are all the steps to get to success. And sometimes you sprain your ankle, and sometimes you get a liver shot and you're down. Sometimes you get knocked out. Sometimes you hurt your knuckle. But it doesn't matter. You still want the goal. You still want the goal. And you got to do the things that you need to do, including rest, including healthy decisions of eating, including rehab, and all those things that are positive changes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be shooting.
No, don't take a shit on me. Dave, I come up with this little lightning round here so I can hammer you with a few questions just to get to know you quickly, and we can cover a lot of ground this way. So I'm going to hit you with a few, and then we'll see how you what do you call it? Dodge and weave? Is that a thing?
Bob and weave, yeah.
I dodge. Okay, so you can bob. I'm dodging. So
I'm gonna forward.
You're in a. This is are you? How old are you? 90? That's like such an old man joke. I'm in a.
You're talking about dodge, man. Dodge doesn't even exist anymore.
Dodge and weave, man. I'm gonna dodge you, and then you go into saying I'm driving a Ford. I'm like, that is such a grandpa joke. You were gonna be the best grandpa ever.
I'm a dad, okay?
No, you're gonna be a grandpa that's like, guys, I got a joke for you, and you're like, yeah, we know, grandpa. You're Ford, I know.
Okay, what do you get when you cross a parrot and a centipede? A walkie-talkie. A walkie-talkie.
Talkie. Oh my goodness.
A parrot and a centipede.
Yeah, that's
you
good.
Get it.
Yes, we just lost every listener now. But
hey, I use the hashtag cool dad. What do you use?
I don't need it. I don't need a hashtag. It just happens. Okay, here's the lightning round. Okay.
Go.
What's the biggest blooper you have never lived down?
Biggest blooper I've never lived down. God, I wish you had given some of these questions to me prior to this show.
This is part of the deal, man. Then it's all packaged. If you pass, I'll come back to you.
Okay, no. The biggest blooper I've never lived down. We were in this little room at my house when I was younger, like the crazy times.
Yeah.
And we were in a hot box room, and my mom.
This is a drug term.
What's that?
For the people that don't know, what a hot box is when you smoke enough weed, it fills the entire room. Just so you know.
Yeah, it was a small room, and my mom yelled up and says, she's from South Africa. She's like, David, what are you smoking up there? And I'm like, oh, it's American cigarettes, Mom. And she's like, don't bamboozle me, mister. And from that day, my friends called me the bamboozler.
I love it. What a great story. That's really good. Okay, if you had to develop your own scratch and sniff sticker, what would be the picture and what would be the smell?
I think I'm one of those like X-rated comic guys. I don't know, man. Like I'm gonna maybe pass on that.
So let's see the second option. A stinky boxing glove.
Man, you know what? I love the smell. I love the smell of that fresh rain and after a hot summer day. So it would be that picture. I have no idea, man. Like. I have no idea. Something that totally is opposite of that. So like stinky socks or something. Like
smell it and it's rain. Just to screw someone's head. Okay, that gives a little insight on what's going on there. What's your biggest inspiration?
Who or what?
Doesn't matter. Whatever you want. Biggest inspiration.
I think my biggest inspiration is actually the team I work with. when I get to see a kid who started with me at 16, living on a reserve, going into building himself as a boxer, and then like getting hit with like the classic, you live on a reserve, you need a drink and do drugs, thing, and leave the gym, and then come back years later to become my second, like almost my first hand in this thing. And just to see him respond to people, and to see him like embrace our culture, and to see him build his own style of leadership and his own style of mentorship, that for me is an inspiration.
Beautiful.
Which is interesting because like,
so cool.
I inspired him, and now he's inspiring me.
And that's literally how it's meant to be. That's part of inspiring someone is you're getting inspired. What's your biggest, here's an interesting question. Biggest business challenge 10 years ago, biggest business challenge today?
10 years ago, it was definitely me. I was the guy standing in the way of everything. I was also the guy driving everything. But because of that, I held on to these beliefs. I held on. My personal context was like, it's my way or no way.
Yeah.
Now, as I've let go, I feel the biggest challenge currently in my business is we have great people, and the same buddy says, the right person in the right seat doing the right job. We have a few seats that are void, and we need more of the right people in the business to really have that next growth period.
I love that you say that. I just feel like if we can just shift, like I coach so many real estate agents, if I can just shift their thinking to saying, what team member do I need, versus I need to find time to do this, or I need to work harder or hustle all the way. Like, it's literally put the right person on your team, and it's so easy. Do you know what I mean?
I talked at TED with Brian Skidmore, I think is how he pronounced his name. He owns the 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Oh, cool.
And he had a really interesting story about, building this company to $30 million, which is huge in itself. But at that point, having to fire everyone, because his culture sucked. And then what he did is he hired somebody, but what he hired, he wrote down a list of everything he loved and loved doing. And
cool. Got a glitch here. Okay, we're going to start from, tell him this guy, he wrote a list of everything he loved doing, and we'll cut that part.
He wrote a list of everything that he loved doing and loved, taking care of and was really good at. And then he wrote a whole list of everything he hated and the stuff he like despised and didn't want to do. And he went looking for this guy. Now he's a $30 million company. So, you can attract a few big players at that point. But the person that he found brought him to 300 million.
Exactly.
Right. And
so
guess
you're thinking like that right now.
Well, listen, it wasn't Brian who went to 300 million. Brian started the vision.
Exactly.
Right? He started the dream. He worked his ass off to get to a point where he had skin in the game, and he needed someone else who had a different strategy to bring him to that next level. And I think that vulnerability as a leader is so important. I tell my guys all the time, I truly study, are a part of the study of you need to do as much as you can to get mastery, and you're going to be autonomous. So you're going to do it without my looking over your shoulder to figure you out. You need to do it. I'm here for support, and our team is here to support, and our family of members is here to support. But you have the ability. You have a personality that I need. I need that personality within the framework to be able to like make this thing rocket. It's so amazing.
Love that, man. Well, that was a long answer, which is awesome. I love it. We'll go if we
fast rounds, baby.
That was a longer round. I honestly don't care. Make shit happen or let shit happen.
Make shit happen.
Make shit happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
But
So, yeah,
long
I know.
of it is make shit happen by giving people the ability and the autonomy and the mastery to make the shit happen.
Mhm.
I don't want to make shit happen. I want to come up with ideas and I want to have vision for my company, and I want to make sure that we're in the same, we have core values that are important, and one of them's
Yeah,
family.
exactly.
If it doesn't equate to family, if it doesn't equate to like that feel welcoming and feel safe, like we're a boxing gym, right? Welcome and safe, or
We love it. I freaking
if
love
it's
it.
not welcoming and safe, get it out of here.
That's like your scratch and sniff sticker, right? You look at your boxing, but it smells like rain. That's good. See, I learned a lot about that. That's
Mm.
cool. Okay, what's your favorite comfort food?
Not the donut sitting right next to me.
You just eating that for fun. Okay, so what is it? What's the thing you're like, this is it?
The only see, one of the things, I have a story in my life and all that other stuff, and the only one I haven't been able to figure out is how to deal with my 32 sweet teeth,
Yeah,
and 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 so there I'm sure there's comfort there. With that said, I've been starting to explore that that mindfulness practice. Our friend Paulo talks highly of it, and just starting to explore that a little bit, and it's been quite amazing, man. It's been quite amazing. I'm not too sure if all entrepreneurs are like this, but for me, sleeping is really tough. I'm thinking about a zillion things as I go to bed, and being able to turn my brain off is really, really,
Yeah,
really.
I'm sure everyone
And
likes that.
doing some mindfulness, even for a couple of weeks, has really helped me sleep. And the segue into the food is that it's really got me thinking about, like, I don't taste most of the food I eat, even though I love good taste.
It's like a wolf.
I don't. I'm like, oh, it's done,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
one of my sons, he eats so slow. I'm like, oh my gosh, hurry up, we got to go to school. But I envy that. I actually am learning from my little 7-year-old son, because he eats it and he enjoys it. He's like, usually with his mouth open, by the way, but we're we're working on it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what you're saying is first of all, you have love anything sweet, and second of all is that you're learning to taste it. To take it in.
Yeah, I think I think the comfort can be found in many things if we actually just take the time to fucking be in the moment of it.
Yeah,
It's quite
so true,
interesting.
man. There's a whole
Yeah.
other talk. I should actually bring Paulo on the show, to be honest, and talk about mindfulness. I think that's a great idea. We'll do a
Yeah.
segue. If you were to give advice to a newly married couple, what would it be?
Don't do it. No, just kidding.
Only
Totally kidding. What would I give advice? You know what? I think that it's that communication is really key. And you go to work and you talk to your peeps at work. You go to school, you talk to your friends at school. You go everywhere and talk to your family or your friends. But I think that it's important that you can maintain a conversation uh, at home as well, and not even as well, like priority,
What
because
does that mean?
it means, I think that the married couple, the brand new married couple, I would
Yeah.
say to them, keep communication strong. Make sure you
Don't let
guys
it slip.
talk. Yeah, don't let that slip. Yeah.
Cool. If you were an animal, what would you relate to and why?
And I love the peregrine falcon, and I love the cheetah, and
Okay,
I
so now
love.
you got two options
I
again.
got three. I've always loved them. I've always loved that, and why the peregrine falcon. Man, it's weird. So many books in my life, but My Side of the Mountain was another book that was like, oh, this is so cool. It's really neat reading books like that to your own kids, that really affected you in life. But peregrine falcon, the speed, the accuracy, the sleekness, the predator, and the cheetah, again, same kind of thing, but very graceful and can take time to relax and recharge. And then the dolphin, of that intellect and being able to connect with humans. It's I think it's the total package. If you could have like all of that in one, arrogant Dolphida.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. I should get that drawn for you. Some weird, distorted. It'll like I have this great idea.
Isn't that almost what a griffin is?
Yeah,
Almost.
almost. If I'll be like, I got this idea. I want to draw this thing. I get it. Saying like, this is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. What would be the greatest gift you've ever received? Not metaphorically, like actual present. What's the greatest gift you're like, this is the best gift I've ever gotten?
You know, the before, like back in my life, it would have been like,
yeah, just like, well,
it would have been like a quarter ounce of weed or something. But
no, let's move forward a little bit.
yeah, a little more.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I try and do for my staff is I try and give them thoughtful things. And you know, one time, one of my staff was studying to be a life coach, and I picked her up a book that meant a lot to her. The book wasn't a very expensive book, but it meant a lot to her. And so I think that any of the gifts that I get that has thought behind it,
so good.
you know, can really mean a lot. So, you know, whether it's a scrapbook of your life that took a lot of time and energy, or a bag of coffee, you know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally.
It doesn't, as long as there was thought, you know.
I saw his post yesterday or today running on a real estate site saying, I've got to give a gift to my client who just bought a house, and it's in 2 days. And I just wrote saying, well, during the process of knowing someone is when you think about the gift, not now. And it's like, because if it's not thoughtful, it's just so like, we've all been given a gift, you know, like my dad bought me a bike. I didn't want a bike. I just wanted to hang out with him. Like there's a lot of story behind gifts, especially if you're coming from a wealthy dad. It's easy to be like, here, kid, what do you want? I just nothing, but it could be a rock that he found when he was on a trip thinking of me. Like, I feel like that's it's actually a huge business conversation. We won't get into it, but it's a really good point. I literally
I have a long answer for that too.
Yeah, well, but you think about it, I call it thoughtfulness marketing. It's thoughtfulness. If you know marketing is not being thoughtful, I don't do it.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We're getting close to time. Every person I bring on the show, I always want to open myself up, be a little more vulnerable. I feel like a lot of the hosts that on shows don't. It's all about the guest, which is really good. I feel like if you were, I always say, ask me a question, challenge me, and I would love to answer whatever question you have. So you turn it around at the end and you can ask me a question.
Do you have any piercings?
Any piercings? Yeah, my left. No, I don't have any piercings. Have I been pierced? Maybe, but no. I've like, how do you know about that piercing?
Yeah, I know, you know, man, I know you very well, and we've gone way back. So, you know, as vulnerable as we could be,
Yeah.
you know, I know a lot about you, and I would just say that, you know, I appreciate the fact that you're a caring guy, and I appreciate the fact that, you know, you're in a business that typically is shallow and typically is sharky and typically doesn't have a very good, you know, outlook of it. Yeah, it kind of resembles a bit of boxing a bit, and you work hard to bring vulnerability and bring compassion and bring humanistic features into it, and I just appreciate that. So
beautiful, man. It's not easy either, and you know that, especially with a world that celebrates income and a world that celebrates, like, legitimately you get put on a list by the gross revenue. So if I make $1 million, I'm a god, but no one ever asks me what my expenses are. So and I could be, if I spent a 1.2 million and then I won the greatest award at real estate can ever win, which is over $1 million. It's like the big one. Like, I don't know how many awards are above $1 million, but it's like you're a god. It's so screwed up because you go after the gross revenue. You don't get celebrated for being a smart business leader. You don't get right. And so it's very, and the thing is, the ego and all these different things are actually encouraged. And then but what's funny is the head of the entire businesses are, like, you might relate to this in real estate. There's this big heads, right? Remax, Royal LePage. There's like some really big ones out there. And that's how they motivate their people for the last 50 years. Just like old boxing would have had their ways. And the thing is though, when I'm talking to the people on the ground, no one's into that. Like, it's funny because I actually sit down and talk to an actual real estate agent or someone, they're like, they don't even align to that. It's funny, but it's a complete disconnect from the people and the organization, because the people in the organization are not excited. Like, if you get on a list, it's kind of cool, but it never feels that good anymore. There's something needing to shift. And I feel like, yeah, it does relate to boxing, how, you come in but to pioneer that, it's definitely not easy, because you got to talk to people's story. You got to talk about humility. Let's talk about vulnerability. How do you connect for real? Like,
well, what's the the analogy is, you got to go and break a trail through a bunch of woods. Yeah, it takes you years, but the guy coming behind you, there's a trail laid, and it's pretty easy. So,
That's true. Yeah, the first guy in's tough.
Yeah.
First guy is tough. So, man, Dave, it's been my privilege. The conversation's been totally rich. I think people are going to absolutely eat this up. I'm going to tag you on everything once it gets out there. I'll send it to you, but I'm going to stop recording now. Thanks so much.
Hold on, one more.
Okay.
Why did Chewbacca get fired from the Death Star? Wookiee mistakes. Wookiee mistakes.
And that's it, folks.
Hashtag cool dad. Hashtag cool dad.
Wookiee mistakes. Hashtag Wookiee mistakes.